Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us for the Elevate Youth California Progress Report training. This call will cover our progress report for programmatic requirements over the duration of your Elevate Youth California award. We'll start off with some introductions. Not with us today is Matt Cervantes, who's our Managing Director of Healthy Youth Development Programs. That's the larger programmatic team that the Elevate Youth California program is under. My name is Pulvinder Gore. I serve as a Senior Program Officer here at the center and am the day-to-day lead with my colleague Shira. So I'll go ahead and pass it to you, Shira.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We appreciate you being on today's call. My name is Shira Murray. I'm an officer with Elevate Youth California here at the Center at Sierra Health Foundation, and I'll pass it to my colleague Travis.
Thanks for that, Shira. Good morning, everybody. My name's Travis Wells. I'm the Senior Program Associate here with the EYC Day-to-Day team. Pleasure to see you all today. And I believe not with us is Antonia Gonzalez, the Program Associate, and then Gerald White, who's the other Program Associate. So we can pass it back to Pulvinder.
We'll actually pass it over to Brianna to introduce the evaluation team.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Brianna Mattis. I'm an evaluation associate at Sierra Health Foundation in the center. And not with us today are Marie Samuel, who's the Managing Director of Evaluation and Learning, and Noemi Avalos, who is the Senior Evaluation Officer.
Thank you, Brianna. Just a friendly reminder that Elevate Youth California is a project of the center, and it's through a contract with the California Department of Healthcare Services, and it's funded through the California Cannabis Tax Fund, specifically Allocation 3. And so our agenda for our time together for over the next hour and a half, or just under an hour and a half, really looking to go ahead and provide an overview of the progress report. You'll see all of the questions. We have some screenshots on our slides to make it easier. And then we also have, Brianna will be walking through the optional Elevate Youth California data tracker. This is a tool that will allow you to collect data. You'll hear from us a handful of times that the tracker is optional. It is a tool that our team has created after feedback from partners to be able to collect the data. However, we do not look for this to be submitted to the center. We actually ask that you do not send ever individual or personally identifiable information about your participants to the center, especially around demographic data or any of those pieces. So we will never request the data tracker. We do ask for data to be sent over as an aggregate, and we'll cover those in the slides that we have about our data tracker, our progress report template. And then we'll have time for questions and answers, additional questions and answers at the end, but you are more than welcome to drop in your questions into the question and answer box. And it seems like we already have a question, which I will answer in just a second. You're able to drop it in the Q&A box. You can also drop it in the chat, but I will go ahead and it looks like my screen stopped. Are folks able to see my screen?
I can see it, Pulvinder.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sure. I think, is everyone else able to see my screen? I'm currently on the agenda slide. Just making sure. Okay.
They're responding in the comments, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. I do have my slides here. And so if you, I will just mention that if you have any questions, drop them over in the Q&A box. You can also drop them in the chat, but hopefully they don't get missed as we're going through some of the pieces. So we'll try our best to make sure we stop to answer questions that are relevant to the sections that we're covering. So as a reminder, we are recording this session. The recording of this session, as well as the slides and the template for the progress reports, will be reshared. The template has already been shared with your organization, and so it was probably sent to the folks prior to the contact list being updated. So we'll look to be able to include all of the folks that filled out, who are listed on the contact survey, as well as the folks who joined today's session. So we'll look to probably get that out over the next week or so. So just a reminder, session is being recorded, and we will provide not only the slide deck, but also resend a copy of the template as well. And then also the optional data tracker. So we're going to go into purpose. You know, I always like to ground us in why we do the things we do. You know, want to be very clear that we really believe that the Elevate Youth California program is really a partnership. And you'll hear us go ahead and call the organizations we fund our funded partners. We really believe it's not transactional, but it is really a relationship that we're establishing and building upon. Many of our round two partners can probably attest to this. We really see it as an opportunity to support you all in the work that you're doing beyond just the financial award that you're provided and collecting the data. So, you know, if we wanted to just go ahead and say, hey, we're giving you this money, report back on these outcomes, and that's it, you know, that would be very transactional, but we really believe it to be a partnership. And so, you know, while one of the components, especially knowing that this is funded through the California Cannabis Tax Fund, it is through the state, the California Department of Healthcare Services. There is an aspect of monitoring progress, right? So there is a piece about when you applied for this award, and that's where we're working with many of the organizations to revise their work plans, that sort of piece, and make sure that their work plans are up to date. You know, you originally said that this is what we were going to go ahead and do. Your organization was going to do for the Elevate Youth California program, and are you making ample progress towards those objectives, those goals, as well as reaching the young people that you mentioned. Now, we understand that there might be challenges that occur over the 3-year partnership. And so in regards to that, you know, it really provides you an opportunity to identify those challenges and seek out areas of support. So the Elevate Youth California team, we do provide technical assistance and support. We meet with partners one-on-one as well as in group settings on a variety of topics. We really lean into your reports to identify technical assistance topics to have in the future, to be able to provide support. Some of those topics are often utilized for our networking calls that are monthly or almost monthly. And because this is one of the nation's largest prevention programs, you know, one of the pieces is also demonstrating that success. And it's the largest prevention program that is funding community-based organizations and tribal organizations. Through some of our work over the last few years, of the demographic data on young people that has been reported, 93% of youth that are served through EYC programs that we have data on are youth of color. You know, those are tremendous outcomes that community-based organizations are able to reach because you all reflect the communities and have lived experiences of those communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. So we want to be able to champion your successes, to highlight them and to acknowledge them, and to ensure that there is continuous funding for community-based organizations and tribal organizations. So you allow us through the reporting to also be able to champion that. And I'll mention that also the reporting allows us to be able, we do often apply for conference panels and workshops. And so we also do select partners to go ahead and present, co-present on beyond those panels for. So just a few things that, you know, that is allowing us to ground the progress reporting, you know, oftentimes again, and I've been on that end where I worked for a CBO and had to report out on outcomes, and you're getting staff. So there are challenges, and we want to address those challenges with the reporting. And our hope is that through this session, as well as through our office hours that we offer, but prior to every report submitted, we will be providing office hours, 2 opportunities for office hours for you to join, to be able to get feedback, to be able to get insights on your report that you're submitting. As well as if there are any questions after you submitted, our team will follow up. I will mention that every report that is submitted to the center is reviewed. My team, our Elevate Youth California program team, has reviewed all programmatic reports that have come in. You know, so that is done. If there's any questions, the team will follow up on them, and if there aren't, you know, you won't hear from us usually. We're trying to get into a better pattern of maybe potentially just sending an email that says, thanks for sending this over, it looks great, and just adding our feedback. But You can imagine we currently have, I believe, 280 plus funded partners that are going to be active this year and that are going to be submitting reports in June. So it can be a little bit difficult to be able to respond to everyone, but we do review all of your reports and we do look to share those successes as well. So with that grounding, I'm going to go ahead and go into the format of the progress report. So we'll jump right in. There are 7 distinct sections of the report. I'm not going to cover all of them. They're listed on the slide here, but we will dive deeper into each of the sections of the report. And so we'll go through all the questions that are going to be asked and kind of give a high level overview as well. And just as a reminder, this is our reporting timeline for all of your reporting. So all of our reporting is due biannually. So every approximately 6 months, and I say approximately because your report 2 for both the progress report and the financial report will be about an additional 6 weeks in that reporting period, given the alignment with the calendar year moving forward in 2025. So your first progress report, as well as your first financial report and detailed expenditure listing, are due June 17th. If there are any changes to that timeline, we'll go ahead and let you know. But as of right now, we do anticipate both of those being collected June 17th. Your next progress report would be due January 31st, and that accounts for that date pushed back to December 31st. We heard a lot of feedback for both programmatic reporting as in being submitted in December. You can imagine with having the report due or ending November 16th with a December 15th date. We had a number of partners who expressed, just the number of reports that they have due at the end of the year, staff who are on holidays, things of that sort. So we are adjusting all of our reporting. So reporting will be due starting in 2025 in January and July, respectively. So this is what you can expect. This is the timeline that you can expect over the next 3 years for your Elevate Youth California Award. And again, as I mentioned, we will have office hours prior to each of the sessions. So we'll share more about our office hours in the next newsletter, as well as in our follow-up. So yes, the first progress report, as well as the first financial report and detailed expenditure listing, are due June 17th. And the time period that it'll cover is November 16th, 2023 to May 15th, 2024. You might be wondering, we weren't notified until, okay, now the dates look off. I don't think they're off. These are the dates that have been provided, but we can confirm. Again, you were notified in April. You might be questioning, well, we didn't have any activities. We're going to go ahead and launch sooner. This is totally fine because this should have been noted in your work plan adjustment that was made, and the report will go ahead and have high level information. And so, sorry, okay, thank you for that. There is an error on this reporting period, so I apologize. So the financial reports 2 and 3, the years are off on those. Actually, I think some of those subsequent years are off. So thank you so much for acknowledging that. We'll fix this before the slides go out to the rest of the group. So they will be due, just high level, the due dates are still correct. It looks like the end reporting period wasn't adjusted. So apologies for that. I was mentioning that we will have office hours prior to those sessions. Sorry about that. So we will, if you did not have activities prior to April, that is okay. You're likely at an advantage because you are able to go ahead and see what data we're looking at and be able to establish a rapport with your organization on how to collect that data. And so as we go through this, really an opportunity inviting all of our funded partners to think through how data is collected amongst your staff to be able to aggregate this for your Elevate Youth California progress report. Okay, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and move into the overview of the program profile. So this is the first section on the progress report template, and on the next slide or two, Brianna will walk through what exactly that'll look like on the online platform. So this section is really allowing us to have just some general information about your EYC program and also include information about partnerships. So you'll be able to identify the track, the organization name, and the reporting period. And we want to be able to collect information on new active partners. So who are folks that you're working with, organizations, individuals. The next slide will show what that looks like further, and then the role that they have. So in a table format, you'll be able to report out on that information. And I'll pass it to Brianna.
Thanks. So I'll be walking through some screenshots of the reporting platform. So this is what you'll see. I do want to note we are still finalizing and making some edits to the reporting platform itself, but the content of the questions and what we'll be asking you won't change. I also want to state before kind of diving into it that this report will probably require internal organizational collaboration. So we ask that you utilize the Word document template that was provided to prepare all of the information that's needed for the report before submitting it in the platform. So collaborate on that Word document and then just submit, because it does have to be all information just needs to be submitted into the online form. And we also recommend using the template to store information that will be asked in each report. And we'll mention these, but one example would be like your program goals and objectives from your work plan. We'll be asking that each report. So that's something that you could just keep in that Word template. So starting with partnerships, this is where, like Pulvinder mentioned, we'll be asking about new active partners. And an active partner is defined as an organization that has a role and contributes to their actions towards the collective goals or objectives of your EYC project. So for each of your partners, you'll enter the name, the organization type, or the sector that they kind of most belong to. And if there's none that really identify them, you could have them just included in the other and write that in. And then you'll indicate their project role, the role that they're playing within your EYC project. So if they're asking as a thought partner, if they refer you to your program, you could let us know there. And then for each kind of additional partner that you'll add, you'll just click that add another new partner button, and that's how you could add information for them as well. And if you didn't have any new active partners for this reporting period, you could just enter an A in there. And then I did want to note for your first report, we ask that you report all of your current partnerships, and then moving forward, it will only be that new active partners from that reporting period. Is that correct, Pulvinder?
Yep, that is correct. And so the way to think about this, because you're going to see new written out throughout the report in both the partnerships and the youth demographics, really to think about this is that this is a new award. And so at this point, if you do have partnerships in place, let's say you are working, you plan to work with a school district in regards to your Elevate Youth California program, you are already in touch with them, you can go ahead and list them on there. We really want you to be mindful of what your Elevate Youth California program looks like at your organization. And so for some organizations, this is a unique standalone program. And for others, there's multiple sources of funding. You're building upon programming that you've already had implemented and looking to make it more robust, increasing the number of young people. So for this, we really do invite you to go ahead and include any of those pieces. So we've seen partners do this in different ways. Our funded partners will do this where they'll list all of the folks that they've collaborated with or partnered with in regards to their Elevate Youth California program. And then others will go ahead and do it as they come up. So, you may want to wait until you're engaging with them. We really invite you to think about partnerships that are going to be active through your Elevate Youth California award. So, if you were in touch with, let's say, trying to think, let's say a business community to go ahead and do something in your planning phase, but that might not be active right now, or you don't see yourself engaging with them over the Elevate Youth California award period. We really wouldn't ask you to include that unless, again, it's been over the duration of the award. So thinking about November 2023 all the way through 2026. There is a question in the chat about should the first report only include the subs identified in the contract? Again, we really want you to be mindful of the active partnership. So in this particular report, you're going to be reporting on data from November 16th, 2023 to May 15th, 2024. So if you did work with any of the subcontractors or any of the partners during that time frame, you would go ahead and include them on there. And then there was another question about if we have guest speakers for various workshops in our programming. Some are one-time speakers, some have been invited in the past. They count as partnerships to report. That's a really good question. So what I would really ask you to look at is the project roles that are here, and really thinking about, you know, individuals or organizations that you're going to have a continuous relationship with. If you invited a one-time speaker, you know, that might not really be a partnership. You know, think about partnerships in terms of ongoing relationships with an organization or entity. And so again, if that's a one-time invite, but, you know, let's say if that's an organization that's working on policy and systems change, and you've asked them to come out to speak, and your organization staff is also working with them to develop some of your programming, you know, you plan to have multiple conversations with them over your EYC award, that would really be a partnership. And so just something to make note of there. And I think that might have been, I think those are both of the questions that were asked related to this. I'll get to the platform submission at the very end, but and then we'll go ahead and go into the next section. The next section is demographic information. So we really want to know about the young people who you're going to have a continuous relationship with. So again, you might see some themes here. One of the things that we really focus on is really thinking about continuous engagement with both partnerships as well as young people. In regards to core programming, we're really looking to identify this or sort of define this. We talk about core programming, and it's really defined as participants who are enrolled, you know, or you're having that you're enrolled in your EYC programming and they're receiving multiple or continuous services, supports, or contact. So if you have a one-time event, we don't expect you to collect demographic data for all of the young people that are coming, or adults and staff, you know, adults and community members that are coming to a one-time event. The demographic data that we really want to know about is the young people who you will connect with. So connect with, provide services, provide supports, or have contact with over your Elevate Youth California award. So this is, again, multiple touch points with those young people between the ages of 12 to 26 that we expect organizations to collect demographic data on. And so we further identify that core programming in 3 different bucket areas. But again, if young people are going to be connecting through your program multiple times, you know, you plan to engage in them, you might have a cohort model where it is a year-long cohort, a 6-month cohort aligned with the calendar year. You know, there might be a cohort over the summer. You might have that sort of specific, more rigid model of where there's a time frame that is that engagement is around. Alternatively, there might be more fluidity around it. You have ongoing programming and you see the same young people who are coming through those various programs. You might have healing circles, you might have a leadership program, you might have mentorship component, but again, those young people are continuing to engage in various sort of programming. So with these young people, between the ages of 12 to 26, we do expect funded partners to collect demographic data on. Again, we aren't looking for individual level data, we're looking at aggregated data. So again, you'll report this out on the new youth who are participating in your program, and because it's the first progress report, all of the youth who you engaged in this last reporting period, so since November to May 15th, will be new youth. And as you move through your award, if they participate in any activities, so let's say you're an organization who had some activities, all of the young people who are engaged in your program would be considered new, even if you've had a previous Elevate Youth California award. This is a new award, so you would be counting all of your young people as new youth in your program. One of the pieces why we have both new youth and youth who have completed as part of the demographic data is to be able to better understand the young people who are continuously engaging in your programming and trying to see if there is any patterns, if there are any patterns around youth who have completed. You know, so are there pieces around the youth that you've been enrolled and those youth who are completing your program? And we really are looking at successful completion. So we'll dive into that in a minute. And then as Brianna goes through this, through the questions specifically, you'll be able to see each of the categories that we ask for that. So I'll pass it back to you, Brianna.
So we have a few different screenshots of the demographic section. So we went through the definitions between core programming and singular programming, but we have it right on the progress report for you to be able to reference. So once again, core programming is where participants must enroll in the EYC programming and receive multiple continuous services, support, or contact. And programming includes civic engagement, mentorship, or peer-to-peer support or leadership. So things like that, like year-long leadership cohort or something. And then singular programming or limited contact, we define that as services or activities that are singular, such as one-time community fairs or outreach with an educational engagement component, or other types of activities or services with limited contact where enrollment information is typically not available and there's no expectation of additional contact. So say you have like a back to school drive or something. So with that in mind, this section is only for those core programming youth. That's what we're looking for the demographics information from. So we'll start by asking for the total number of unduplicated or unique new participants, and then we'll ask about the total number of youth engaged. So this would include young people who participated in the core programming activities or events during the reporting period, and participants previously enrolled that continue to be active. So say your activity started in November of last year, and then in reporting period 2 and later this year, they are still active. So you would count them in this currently engaged number 7 question. Next slide.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to answer questions just to clarify. So as you'll note on this slide, in number 7, we're asking about the number of youth who were engaged, and this will include both, as Brianna mentioned, the number of new youth as well as those that are previously enrolled. On the next slide, you'll see that demographic data is not required for that, for those youth who are continuing. And Brianna, I can go on to the next slide.
Yes, so yeah, I'm wondering, there are a few more demographic questions.
I think it might be helpful to show the tables and then come back to the questions, because I think I have a feeling as soon as you explain it, many of the questions might be answered, but we can make sure that we're clarifying any of the questions in the chat as well.
Okay, sounds good. So the next questions are related to participants who have completed core programming. So first we'll ask about the measurable milestones and how you define program completion. We understand that there's a lot of variety across our EYC funded partners. So we want to, we've included this question for you to share your definition and what completion looks like for your programs. So this could be a specific number of hours, attending a certain percentage of the sessions, such as like 50% or more, completion of certain tasks, or completing goals. If your project implements multiple types of activities or has multiple components that measure success differently, say you have like a mentorship program and a social media campaign project, you could outline both of those within this section. So just include both of those. Then the next question will ask for the number of successfully completed participants this reporting period. And to define successfully completed, youth are successfully completed when they've completed the requirements to exit your project using that definition that you provided in the previous question and are no longer participating in core programming activities or events. So say they, that you had that year-long cohort and they attended at least half, say they attended, 80% of those sessions, and that would be a definition of successful completion. Next slide. So this, we have shared an example of the different, so for both the new and completed participants, there are 6 kind of demographic categories that will have questions that we're interested in knowing about. So the first is age. And with this question, I want to highlight some components of the question. So the number of new participants, so for this example, I just have the number of new participants as 5. So it will show up, it will appear in red as your total from question 6. So you'll be able to reference and just kind of use that number to complete this section as well. So if the number entered does not match, you'll get an error message. And each demographic question includes an unknown box, individuals for whom you do not have self-reported data. So if you don't have like a sign-in sheet or a way to gather this data currently, we'll be walking through the optional data tracker that can help you to keep track of participant data. But we ask that you create some sort of way to capture this demographic data so that we at the center can understand your program, who your program is serving a little better. And then on the next slide, I do have an example of what that error message will look like. So say you did have 5 new participants, you will receive an error message. Say if you only entered 4, that you'll need to, the total must equal to 5 or whatever that total number of new participants is for that to match and for you to kind of continue completing the progress report. The next slide is the gender identity, and this is just the screenshot of that question. And then next we have the race ethnicity. So just so the text wasn't super small, I've only included the first few demographic categories, but the Word document includes the full list for you to be able to reference. So one thing to note is your organization may collect information on race ethnicity using different categories. We encourage you to apply them to these categories as much as you can and to use the open-ended question at the bottom of this section to share more about how your participants identify. And if that information is available, participants who identify with more than one race ethnicity may be counted in more than one category. And if that information is not available, you could include them in individuals reporting 2 or more races or ethnicities. So that screenshot isn't in there, but we do have a question or an option to include multiracial or multi-ethnic youth there as well. And we also have a section for you to provide more information on new youth who are members of any tribal nations for you to share the names of those tribes for.
And I'm just going to go ahead and add a caveat around, the Hispanic or Latinx populations versus the indigenous to Latin America. We have a few organizations who really serve communities who were indigenous to Latin America prior to colonization. And so just making that distinction. So those organizations do know the young people that they're serving that are indigenous to those areas. And that does differ than the indigenous populations that are to North America. Understanding there's the complication with borders and all of those pieces, but this is the way we found a way to make sure that we're acknowledging those communities, given the feedback from our partners around communities that are indigenous to Latin America.
So the next slide we've included, we also have some for Asian as well as Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander participants. We have some subcategory questions, and this once again will include your total number of for this example for Asian youth that you entered earlier, and that will you'll be able to enter those subcategories on this page. And then I think the next slide is the same kind of setup for the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander subcategories as well. And then the final demographic questions that we ask about are youth who identify as 2S LGBTQ+, youth who are experiencing housing insecurity, youth in foster care, and youth who are systems impacted. And once again, for the purpose of this training, we've only shown these questions for the new participants, but just note that the same demographic questions will be asked for all of the completed participants as well.
And before we go on to the next slide, as Brianna mentioned, you're going to go ahead and see the same subset of questions that are offered for the the youth who have completed. And we did get a few questions in the chat, so in the Q&A box. I'm going to go ahead and answer those before we move on. So to confirm for core programming demographic, only those who are part of core programming and only reported once as new and not in subsequent reports. That is correct. So I'm going to go back to this original question. Here we go. Nope. A few slides ago. Okay. So in this section here, you're going to go ahead and have a total number of unique unduplicated new participants. So again, once you have identified a young person as being new in your Elevate Youth California program, so all of the young people you engaged from November 16th onwards would be considered new to your EYC funded program on this specific award. And so once you count, so if I was a young person, no longer, but if I was a young person between the ages of 12 to 26 and I participated in activities, let's say in January, I would be noted on the new participants tab. Let's say your organization has a cohort model. If I've already been noted, if my demographics have already been noted on your reporting on any report, I would not have demographics for myself in any future report. So you would only have demographics for each individual one time in your report. So if you have noted a young person already, you would not go ahead and have demographic data for them as well. So this data is unduplicated. So by the end of your award period, if you engaged in 96 young people over the course of those 3 years and 6 weeks, you would have 96 new participants a part of your programming. And question number 7 asked the question about how many total youth were engaged. So you might be thinking, well, I want to make note of, the young people who are continuing our program. And so that's exactly what question number 7 is for. It allows you to go ahead and list the number of young people that were engaged. So I might have been new in report 1, but in report 2, I would be counted under question number 7. So you can be sure to highlight that there. To answer a few more questions. I know we've answered them in the chat itself, but I'm going to go ahead and just address them here verbally. So that way, if anyone's watching the recording later, they know too. Someone asked about the distinction about the Latinx and Indigenous to Latin America. That is noted on the demographic tab. It is noted here, so Hispanic and then Indigenous to Latin America as well. Similar question, once a young person enrolls in our programs, they may complete a leadership cohort, for example, but they'll be engaged in core programs or services for the remainder of the grant period, sign up for another cohort, program case management, group activity, so they would not be unenrolled or have completed. Should we wait till the close of the grant to document as completed? Yes. So if you have a cohort model that they're only engaging in EYC funded activities for a certain period of time, they're not going to engage in any future core programming at any point over the duration till 2026, till the end of 2026, then they would be noted as completed. But in this case, if they are going to engage in programming, it might just be a different type of service or activity that is still funded through Elevate Youth California. They would not be marked completed until they stop engaging in programming or your Elevate Youth California award is completed. So at that time, you would mark them as completed because your award is over. Another question asked about our programming includes a wide range of age groups. Are we only asked to report on those within this age group, or should we submit data for the entirety of our program? A friendly reminder that Elevate Youth California does prioritize young people between the ages of 12 to 26. So we do ask that demographic data is reported on young people between the ages of 12 to 26. We understand, and there is a family engagement component to this award. Again, the reminder is really around the primary target age range of your programming should be 12 to 26. Now, you might have a young person who has a sibling or a parent or some sort of family relationship that is under 12 and over 26, or they might possibly age out over the course of the 3 years. That is totally fine. But we do ask that all demographic data is reported on those who are between the ages of 12 to 26. There'll be some opportunities to include data on other participants in your programming, but we're not looking for that demographic data. And again, just there's a question about should this be duplicated or unduplicated? This is all unduplicated, or yes, unduplicated. I had to question myself there. Unduplicated data. So again, young people are only being counted once for the demographic data over the course of the 3 years. Okay. I think that gets at, oh, there was another question about youth that completed the program in November 2023, whether they'd be new for this reporting period. So again, if you were funded through Elevate Youth California previously, that award ended November 15th. And this award technically starts November 16th, although you might have started activities afterwards. So any program at UIC funded programming that began November 16th onwards would be considered, those youth could be considered in this report. But if it was prior to November 16th, they should not be included on this. Okay, and I think that might be the last, oh, there might be 2 open questions still. Will there be subcategory for immigrant refugees? This is a great question. So we do ask for some, there is an opportunity to go ahead and add additional information about the young people. I don't know if it's on the slides, but we do not ask for subcategories of immigrant refugees. You can put that in one of the text boxes at the end of the report, or at the end of this section. I believe there is a spot, right, Brianna, for that. There's like a,
Yes, so there is an open-ended question for more information on the youth, which there's no screenshot of, but there is a question on that.
Thank you. So again, the subcategory data that we do collect currently is only for Asian and NHPI data at this time. And then given some of the complexities around tribal nations and the number of tribal nations we have a text box for that, so we're able to go ahead and review that there. So again, there is a text box at the very end of these questions that you can add in additional demographic data. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead. Oh, there is another question in the chat box. If youth culminate and are closed out, but then return a year later to enroll in another program of ours, should they be included again in youth demographics or not? That is a great question. So this is where, they are closing out in a program. You might have had a cohort model, but in a year you change some of your programming. I would say just look out to reach out to us. At this time, we would not have you mark them as new youth. You would just note them in the number of youth engaged, but we do ask that you go ahead and specify this on your report or reach out to the UIC team around this. We don't anticipate this to happen many times, because we do ask that if you aren't sure if the young person's going to come back, that you hold off until you really do. But there might be some either changes to your programming, or the young person might have said that, they've completed a cohort model and they don't anticipate coming back. Maybe they moved and they moved back to the region you're serving. There's a number of various factors there, but you wouldn't include their demographic data, but you would just make note of it on your engaged youth on number 7, I believe it was. Okay, there's another question about if we have a small cohort and we also do a youth conference with many youth attending only once, how do you show this total serve? So this is a great question and you're getting ahead of the singular programming. So I'm going to hold off on this question until we get to that, but there is a place for you to report out on singular programming or engagement with young people that is not occurring, reoccurring. So there is an opportunity to do that. We do not ask for demographic data. Can you imagine asking, you know, at a one-time event, everyone to report out on the very detailed demographics that we have? That would be very cumbersome. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about the burden on our partners for those singular or one-time activities as well. So we're going to go jump into next. We're kind of continuing on the track of core programming. So a part of that youth empowerment, we want to capture the number of activities or the types of activities that you have as well. I think there's a hand raise, and so we'll come back to the questions there because we're going to go along into the youth empowerment piece. So we want to know about the number of activities, the number of unduplicated youth in each of these category implementation strategies that participated. So we have broken down the types of the activities by type or implementation strategy. And so they are listed on this slide here: peer-led support, peer-led programming, mentorship, relationship building, and youth civic engagement, leadership opportunities for policy systems and environmental change. So we're asking you for the activities that were conducted over the award period to identify the number of activities and number of youth who participated in these activities. So gonna get a little bit complicated here, so just bear with us as we explain some examples on this. We're gonna go back with me being a youth member. If I'm a youth member who participated in 5 peer-led activities and also participated in youth civic engagement activities, I would only be counted once under the peer-led activities. So let's say your organization hosted 5 peer-led support activities. I attended all 5 of them. Let's say if you also had 7 youth civic engagement activities, but I only attended 6. So you would go ahead and list, I'm going to go ahead and go on the next slide. Under number of activities, 5 activities were held for peer-led support. And I would be considered in all 5 of those because I would be considered as one person who attended those activities. So it gets a little bit complicated here. We are asking you to report the number of unduplicated young people, but the young people could be counted in each of the multiple strategies. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brianna to walk through each of these a little bit more in detail. Again, just bear with us as we explain this. It can be a little bit complicated at first or confusing at first, but we're hoping to go through a few examples to cover this.
Yeah, so for the youth empowerment activities, you will select the specific strategies that you engaged in that period, and then you'll complete questions based on that. So for this, for peer-led support, I just want to walk through the definitions of all of these, which we've included in the report itself. So peer-led support and peer-led programming would be defined as programs that include cultural peers, peers with similar cultural and lived experiences, to foster an environment of inclusiveness and belonging, or peer-led program activities. Mentorship or relationship building would be programs that address social isolation and disconnection from the community by establishing at least one stable, caring relationship with an adult or older youth mentor. And then youth civic engagement and leadership opportunities for PSE or policy systems and environmental change would be youth civic engagement related to substance use issues or their drivers or root causes, things like trauma, systemic oppression, and marginalization. Youth voices must play a central role in determining the policy focus. And just to note that, the strategy is required for funded partners in the standard or innovation track, which this is a standard track. So for each strategy or core programming, you will let us know that total number of unduplicated youth engaged in that strategy, the number of activities that were conducted, and then we've provided an open text space for you to describe what those activities looked like during this reporting period. And you could also include if there was any new or increased opportunities for youth leadership within this. On the next slide, we have the mentorship or relationship building. So once again, would ask for the number of youth mentees who received mentorship services, as well as the total number of mentors, which would be peers or older youth or adult mentors, the number of activities, and then once again, a space to describe that. And finally, we have the youth civic engagement leadership opportunities for PSC change. So once again, the total number of unduplicated youth engaged in this activity, the number of activities conducted related to youth civic engagement, and a space for more description of that.
So there might be some questions about, again, if I participate as a young person in both of, I'm going to go to the prior slide here. I'll go here. If I participated in both peer-led support as well as youth civic engagement, I would be counted as a youth participating in each of those activities. However, if I attended multiple activities in peer-led support, I would not be duplicated. So if I attended 5 of those activities that you hosted, I would still only be counted here as once, as one unduplicated young person who participated. Now, because I also participated in the youth civic engagement activities, I would also be counted under that section there. So you could see a duplication across implementation strategies, but we are not looking for you to duplicate within the strategy itself. Another question that might be coming up for folks is, well, we had an activity and it might be considered both peer-led support or peer-led programming. We had young people who led civic engagement opportunities, they led a power building piece. Where would we classify that as? We're really leaning on organizations to pick one of the implementation strategies that best identifies that particular activity that you're noting. So we do lean on you all to make sure that you're thinking about where that activity, which category that activity fits under. So it's a little bit, again, there might be a little bit confusing at first, but as Brianna walks through the optional data tracker, you'll be able to think about different ways your organization is collecting this information to be able to report out on it. There was a question about demographic data that I'm going to just pause and get to. How much detailed demographic info about the youth is required? Normally, we don't submit every bit of personal info due to potential, concerns around government reporting and using it against the communities. That's a great question. I will say that you're not reporting individually identifiable data. So again, if you are collecting this information, especially some of these categories here within the following populations, this really allows us to be able to talk more about the reach and success that community-based organizations are having in reaching young people who fit within some of these categories. So again, the data that is utilized for Elevate Youth California, it's shared in aggregate. It isn't individual level data. We don't report out on any individual organization's demographic data. If you visit the news section of our website, you'll be able to see the 2022 Elevate Youth California annual report. We only report out on the aggregate across all of the partners, not about any individual organization. This just really allows us as the center and the Department of Healthcare Services to be able to highlight the successes and ensure that the funding remains in the hands of community-based organizations. So again, we really invite you. I will say that many of our partners have shared in the past that they have challenges collecting this information. So that is something that we're thinking through about, when you first engage with a young person, whether or not you're able to secure or you're able to go ahead and get their demographic data. There might be questions about, is this young person going to continue and continue in your programming or activity? So again, we do ask that if you wanted to wait a reporting period, now it's a little bit longer, so you have more timing. But let's say if at the first week of May, you had a young person who expressed interest, but they only came to one activity. If you wanted to hold off to the next reporting period, you're more than welcome to hold off once you've secured demographic data. But again, once you've gone ahead and entered a young person's demographic data, we won't ask you to go ahead and report on them. So if you did identify already once that the young person didn't provide this information, or you don't have their data, you wouldn't be able to, with the way that the progress report is set up right now, you wouldn't be able to go back to add it. So again, if you have a young person who's entering at the end of the reporting period, and you know you're going to secure demographic data for them, maybe in the coming weeks, but it's going to be already after this report is due, you're more than welcome to consider adding them into the next reporting period. So again, once you've reported, even if you've reported that the data isn't there, we're not asking for that data at this time to be collected or to be reported on again. Okay, we're going to try to make our way through the last few slides here, and that way we can have timing for the optional data tracker as well. So overview of singular programming. So this is really for those one-time events, large-scale events. You know, you hosted a movie night, a back-to-school night. You hosted, you know, you had an educational event at a fair. Whatever that might look like. This would be considered, you know, as singular programming with limited contact. So, you know, again, young people that you don't anticipate seeing over the course of your Elevate Youth California award, or you're not sure because it's a larger event, it's kind of hard to collect demographic data. You know, we don't expect, if you hosted a movie night for the families of the young people that were in your program, that to collect demographic data on everyone. So this is where we're able to go ahead and just get some information about that, and I'll pass it over to Brianna to share more about that.
Yes, so for these singular programmings, we do have the, this is going to be for the limited contact singular program, and we've included the definition here again for you to reference, that these are those singular one-time events that with limited contact where enrollment information isn't available and there's no expectation of additional contact. And for these singular programming activities, we're asking for the total number of youth or adults who attended or were engaged in those activities. And this can be a duplicated number of individuals, noting that it's going to be those kind of probably larger events where it's more difficult to collect demographic data. As well as the next question asks about the number of singular activities that were conducted. And then we just have another kind of space for you to add more description of what those activities looked like.
Thanks, Brianna. The next section covers the progress towards your goals, and this is both programmatic as well as policy goals. Really allows us to be able to see the progress that you're making towards the goals and objectives that you've outlined. We also have some additional caveat on the report that says if you do need to change your goals, we've had some work plan modifications happen. So, you know, you're going through your programming, you're seeing some challenges with recruiting young people, or, you know, your young people decide that the policy goal that you might have set out in your work plan wasn't aligned with where they're at. So you need to change that. You can do a work plan modification at any time. So you would just reach out to the Elevate Youth California email and just request that you would like to make those changes. We'll describe that process for you, and you will receive a written review or approval for that change. But we do allow for modifications. We really want the programming to be relevant. When you applied, it was prior, you know, while you have an opportunity to revise your work plan before we issue out contracts, we understand that that might look different now than in 2 years or even 2.5 years. So if there are any changes, you're able to make them. We want you to be able to just share with us what that is. And then we'd go through that sort of formal process to make sure it's documented as well. But this allows us to know what your progress is. And, you know, we don't expect policy goals to be achieved in the first 6 months or year. That might vary depending on where you're at in that process. But again, it allows us to better understand the progress that you're making. And so for us, it's really ensuring that you're making progress over time on both your programmatic and your policy goals, and then an opportunity to share some of those challenges as well as successes that you've had. With that, I'll pass it to Brianna.
So for these questions, we have a number of cells for you to include your project goal as well as those programmatic objectives. And then we have a space for you to report any overall progress towards those goals. And we also will be sharing a participant and PSC outcomes example handout for you to be able to reference as you complete this cell. And this would include any activities that your organization conducted and participant outcomes achieved, if you have any to report. And kind of like Pulvinder mentioned, like we recognize that you may not have outcomes to report these first couple of reports, but this is where you'll be able to indicate those if there was any changes in knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, or improved skills, you would be able to highlight them in this section. On the next slide, we've included the policy goals. So these questions will ask about the policy goals that you outlined in your work plan. So first you would just describe the policy goal, include the level of the policy goal. So if it is district level, city level, county level, state level, as well as the current phase of the policy goal. And those are listed down at the bottom. So if it's in the issue identification phase or the strategy and planning, etc. And then we also ask that you include if youth were engaged, if the policy goal was identified by youth participants. Say it was something you heard in a really early listening session and that was how the policy goal was decided, you would just indicate yes or no for that question. And then we have just another cell for you to indicate progress towards the policy goal. And then we also have just the space for your successes and challenges. So top 1 to 2 successes during the reporting period, things that could be program operations or different efforts or participant outcomes. And then the next question, we also want to learn about those main operational or programmatic challenges that are affecting progress towards your goals and objectives. And if you've made any progress to kind of work on those challenges, then you could let us know here.
Thank you. Okay. No other questions related to this section right now. So we'll continue on youth listening sessions. So as you might remember, a minimum of 1 youth listening session a year is required for each year of each of the grants. So every organization is required annually or programmatic year within the programmatic year to complete 1 listening session. So before December 31st, 2024, your organization should have completed at least 1 youth listening session. And then moving forward in 2025 and 2026, there would be another 1 required. We do understand that many organizations do more than 1, and that is totally fine, but this allows us to be able to collect data on the listening sessions. We have identified and clarified what youth listening sessions are. And we'll go ahead and provide some of that information as well in the FAQ document, as well as potentially look to link it in this question. But youth listening sessions are really a set aside time for your organization to listen to the young people. So, we expect, anywhere from 5 or more young people. This could be considered as a focus circle or focus group. Some organizations classify this as, they've also seen it as like a healing listening circle. But again, it's really an opportunity for your organization to hear from young people on a relevant topic related to your Elevate Youth California award. Some organizations have utilized it in the planning phase to go ahead and talk about the proposed activities, the proposed policy goals. Others utilize it in the midway of the program to be able to get feedback from young people about particular areas of the programming, what could be improved. Some organizations use it for campaign development of listening to young people around what strategies or tactics that they might be able to implement in. But again, it is a set aside time for your organization to hear from young people. What it is not is if you hold like 10 minutes after an activity, after an event or activity to be able to get feedback from the youth, that would not be considered the youth listening session that we're looking at. It is great that your organization is implementing that feedback from young people, getting surveys from them. But again, this is a standalone time that we're really looking at. And then I'll pass it over to Brianna to go ahead and talk more about it. And I just wanted to note that youth listening sessions would not be considered as part of the core programming. So just remember that this would not be considered as part of the core programming. We do not collect demographic data on this, but we do collect the information on this slide.
Yes, so to that note, this is where you would not be counting your youth listening sessions in section 3, talking about the core programming activities. This is where we'll kind of ask for information regarding your youth listening sessions. So we've just included some of this information that Paul Venter mentioned in this section as well. So at least one is required each grant year. And so you would indicate if a listening session was convened this reporting period, and then you would let us know if how many. If say that you conducted 2, you would include that number here, and then the youth that attended all of those listening sessions. So say there was 3 at both of those, then you would include that 6 youth attended those listening sessions. And then you would let us know some of the highlights, like the themes and the guiding steps that emerged from that listening session. You would include that in the question below.
Thanks, Brianna. And if I remember correctly, this is the last section. So section 7 of your report is going to be about cultural lens. So a key component, as you might remember in the RFA and application, was really being mindful of culturally, linguistically, and healing-centered approaches that your organization takes. So we want to learn about that. We often share some of the practices and policies that organizations develop with one another, obviously not calling you out unless we've gotten your permission to do so. But we want to know what those practices are and how you're doing that with your programming to be able to, again, highlight those successes and to be able to create a community of learning as well. And so we do ask you to describe those practices, and then also we specifically ask about staff training. So we want to know about staff who have received culturally responsive training. You can go ahead and add any additional comments to that section, but again, really being with this award, were there any changes? So if with your Elevate Youth California award, your organization was able to critically think about additional training for your staff, or there were some changes in your policies or practices that implemented or that resulted in the implementation of staff trainings, we want to know about it. So we do ask this information, and then just adding any additional comments, highlights, and media coverage. So if you have been in the media, whether it's the news, any sort of newspaper, whatever that looks like, we would love to know about it, and we would love to highlight it as well. Brianna?
So this is the cultural lens and additional information section. So we've included some key definitions of those terms here, as well as a space for you to enter the ways that your organization use culturally and linguistic appropriate practices and or healing-centered approaches this reporting period. And you could also include any relevant new organizational policies or practices that were added. The next question asks about staff that received this training, culturally responsive training during the reporting period. And just to note, we do not expect that our funded partners are receiving training every reporting period. It's just to indicate when that happens. So say that new staff is onboarded, they receive training, you could include that number here. And if there was none, you could just have the 0. And then we also have a section for you to just let us know about media coverage. You could include links. You could include information in the memory fox, which we'll have the link to. And yeah, you could share any media coverage with us.
Thanks, Brianna. And so as this wraps up our reporting template and all of the questions that are asked, again, we have shared the template overall in a Word document with you. We will reshare that again as we finalize the questions to update the ways that some of the questions have changed. And the data that we've collected or that we've shared out on the prior reporting template does remain the same. In one of the examples, it shifted from a table to a sort of drop down. And so we just want to make note of those. So we will update that. Really do encourage, there was a question in the chat or there's a question in the Q&A earlier about is this a one-time sit down and complete to submit, or can we edit and save as we go? And I really like this, the way it's phrased. This is the survey link that we provide is a one-time sit down and complete. Unfortunately, there is no way to save your report, and this has to do with not having logins. So there was a question earlier, which I'll address is, is this similar to the financial platform where only one person can submit, or does multiple people have access to it? So the link will be available for anyone in your organization to submit. Because we wanted to reduce the barrier with changes in regards to who's submitting, that sort of piece, and not having individual links for each of the organizations, we did open it up in this sort of way. And so with that, the caveat is that there is no save function. So I cannot stress enough, that your organization does have 1 month after the reporting period. So you have from May 15th or May 16th to June 17th to submit your report. So we do ask that you take that time to work with your staff to be able to utilize the Word document template, or if you need to convert it to a Google Doc or another SharePoint document, you're more than welcome to, but you have your internal version that you're working on prior to submitting. As you can imagine, with 75 questions, and it seems like a lot, but again, I'll add that the demographic questions are what makes the number of questions expand so much. And so it's not as many questions as it looks like because of the way that the demographics are set up. But just a reminder that we do ask that you complete the narrative and quantitative sections and just the entire report on a separate document, and then go ahead and just sit down and transfer over that data. It is a lot to complete, and what we'd hate to have is that you start working on your report, and at some point you have to get up, you don't get through all of it, and all of your data is gone. So we'd hate for that to happen. So we do ask that you do that. And also there's some questions that require a little bit more collaboration, and so we do really believe that it's the best to go that route. So I know that there's a hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and pat Luz, if you wanted to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, you're more than welcome to. I know you've had your hand raised for a little while now. And while we answer your question, we'll have Brianna jump into the data reporting, the optional data reporting tracker, data tool tracker. Sorry.
We did want to know, we did have the cumulative report question.
Oh,
section.
okay. Okay, so we'll take Luz's question and then we'll go to the cumulative. Thank you, Brianna. I'm getting ahead of myself here.
I think I clicked on it on accident. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No problem. There is an option to just, I'll lower your hand there. So that sounds good. Okay. So this sums up the reporting that's going to be done every 6 months. I'm going to quickly go through the list of cumulative questions. This is going to be in your last report. So in December 2026, or a little bit before that, you'll get a new link from us that has your cumulative report as well. So it'll have the progress report, and at the very end, there'll be some additional questions. There is really no additional data that you need to aggregate over time. It's really about hearing some of the themes, some of the pieces, and then also just being able to think about like the average length of youth that participated in your programming, thinking about the types of services that you offered or programming that you offered. So really high level questions. If you're an organization who wants to keep some of this ready to go, you're more than welcome to do that. But you should be able to reflect on the award period and be able to answer the questions in the cumulative report section. So we'll go ahead and share those quickly.
Yes, so the first kind of cumulative question that we have asks about your program model and the services or supports provided. So you'll be able to select up to 5 services or supports provided to youth enrolled in your EYC program. And this will give us a sense of what your program model looks like. If it does not fall into any of the categories, we've included some write-in options as well. And then the next question asks about the length of time that you'd participate in your program. And this will give us a sense if you do have kind of more shorter programming. So if it is less than 8 weeks, or if it is more than 2 years, you could let us know. And if there are different components of your EYC program, you could include those here and then just have one for each row. That's why we've included a few of these here.
Thanks, Brianna. So that, in addition, I think there's some additional questions that are about just overall successes, challenges, those sort of pieces in the cumulative portion. But those are the two specific questions that are really asked about relating to your programming. And with that, I know we only have about 12 minutes left, but we're going to go ahead and swap over and I'll stop sharing and Brianna will go through the data tracker tool. And I'm totally messing up the name there. We might go a little bit over beyond 12, but we'll try to get through this in the time that we have. While Brianna pulls up that tracker tool, there is a question about, are there penalties for late reports or if the report is not submitted at all? This is a great question. And I am so glad that you asked this question because reflecting on or sort of honing in on the partnership. Partnerships are also about communication. So we have communicated the timeline that the reports are due. And what we really do ask our partners to do, our funded partners to do, is to communicate if they need an extension. So if you need an extension, we expect to hear from you before the reporting deadline, before the deadline of the report, to be able to know if you need an extension. So we expect all partners, if you need an extension for the June 17th due date, for you to email us prior to June 17th requesting your extension. We understand that things might come up for your organization and that's okay. We just need to know that it's going to be late. What's really challenging for us is when partners do not submit and they do not get in touch with us. And if we've emailed and we're not hearing back from your organization, we are beginning to implement a quality assurance component. The state is leading this component, and part of that is also late submissions without extension requests. So I will just reiterate that if you ever need an extension, please reach out to us before the due date. And we will provide approval. We ask that you include the date that you're going to be able to submit by, and we'll be able to have that. So with that, Brianna, I'm going to pass it over to you for the optional data tracker.
Thanks. So this is our optional data tracker. It is a way that a resource that we're providing for you to be able to collect and have all of the information that is asked for in your biannual progress reports in this kind of one-stop shop. So we ask, and I want to highlight, do not send us this tool. This is going to be used for your organizational use, and it's not, there's information such as names, address, phone numbers, and personally identifiable information that we do not want access to. So for the protection of your participants and your partners and all of that information, to just do not share this with us. We just want you to use it as a tool for completing your progress report. So we have this first page that has instructions on everything and for the different tabs, and I will kind of just be walking through the tabs quickly. So the first tab is where you'll be able to include information on your partnerships. And we do have, so you'll just include the name of the organization, the date the partnership started, since you'll be able to use this throughout the course of the progress reports. You'll be able to filter and see which ones were for those specific time periods of the reporting periods. You'll indicate if they are an active partner, once again, having that active role and contributing through their actions towards your EYC project goal. And then we have the organization type sector. So this one, the active is a drop down with yes or no, as well as the organization type. And these are all the same categories that are listed in the progress report. And then if it's a category that's not listed here, you could just include that in the other. And then in the same way, we have the project role for you to be able to select what their project role looks like, and an other box for you to include that. Next, I want to go into the youth demographics. This is kind of one of the main kind of tabs in this. So this would be, once again, specifically for youth participating in core programming, and it's asked in section 2 and 3 of the biannual report. So you'll enter youth information, 1 per row, and we have a few example information here. So once again, like this is that asterisk information that is for your use and not for our use. So you'll include their enrollment date, which will help to identify like the new youth when they started. And then there are some drop-down menus for all of the different categories that we ask about in the progress report. So age group, race, ethnicity. This one looks funny, but I think it is gender identity. To us, LGBTQ plus status, if they are housing insecure, in foster care, or system impacted. So you'll just go through and select the appropriate selection for each youth. And then if they are part of a tribe, you would indicate the tribe here. And then we have participant status. So we have, if they are currently active, you would just indicate that, or if they're currently closed, you would indicate that. And for closed youth, you would enter the date of their exit, and then the reason for their exit. And I do want to note that we, as you saw in the progress report, we asked for a successful completion. So we are not interested in like the kind of reasoning behind their exit, but we ask that the information that's included in the progress report is the successfully completed youth, along with, of course, the new youth. So I want to share, we will be sharing a version of this with the example information as well as a clear version for you to fill out. So with the demographics, I'll actually skip forward to this demographics table tab. So we've included some kind of auto pivot tables for you to easily have tables for you to include into the progress report. The kind of information that you'll need here would be the enrollment date. So you would just be able to filter the dates for the specific reporting period and then use the data that kind of generates. I will note, so the way that you'll be able to refresh this is if you go to the data tab, and then it's this refresh all button, and it will refresh all of the tables here. So say you added in some new youth and you want to refresh the tables, that's how you would update the numbers. And then you'll be able to use these tables to fill in the progress report. Once again, like I mentioned, because we ask about the successfully completed youth in the progress report, this is filtered for successful completion. But, you know, of course, for your purposes, if you're interested in the demographics of youth who dropped out or you know, wanted to, you know, do some more research on your youth and your kind of enrollment data, of course, that could be used for this as well. So going back, the next tab is on youth participation in the core programming activities. So we have these 4 cells, so A through D are auto-populated, so you don't need to make any edits here. But for each youth, you would indicate here which core programming activities they are engaged in. So if they are engaged in youth peer-led support or peer-led programming, you would just include the yes and no. We have included a few other options here in the case that you are engaged in other programming that you would like to track within this tracker. So it's kind of all in one location. But we are not asking for the other on the progress report. And we do also have this set up so if there are youth who are closed or no longer active, you won't have to fill in new information for that. So like I mentioned, this goes across for each reporting period. There are sections to walk through for the different core programming activities that they're engaged in. The next section would be kind of the mentor for the mentorship component, the mentor contact information. So if you have like a one-to-one ratio with mentors, which I don't feel like is usually the case, but you would just be able to include mentor information and their kind of contact. The most kind of relevant would be the number, be able to see the total number of mentors that you have, and then the start and end date to indicate which reporting period you would include them in. Next, we have a section for you to track your core programming activities. So once again, those repeated continuous services activities. So you'll be able to indicate those here, including the activity date. And then we have a drop down for the reporting period for you to indicate that here. The type of prevention activity, which kind of the main three activities it falls under. And then if you'd like to include any additional notes or description for your purposes to kind of rack your brain, considering it, these are 6-month time periods, so that's probably helpful. And then we have a section for the singular programming activities, those kind of no additional contact is expected activities. And just the same kind of setup where you'll be able to indicate the name of the event, the date it occurred, which reporting period it fell under, as well as the number of attendees. And then the final section would be the youth listening sessions. So once again, indicating the date and reporting period of the youth listening session and the number of youth that attended that session, and then any highlights from the youth listening session. So that was a quick run through of this tool, but we wanted to provide this to you as a resource to filling out the progress report to be able to keep track of all of your data. So we recommend, updating, like the partnerships and the youth listening sessions and at least monthly so that it is kind of up to date with your program.
Thanks, Brianna. I'm going to go ahead, and I don't think there's any other questions so far about the data tracker. I'm just going to go ahead and remind partners that are on that this is an optional data tracker. I mentioned this in the chat, but it is an optional data tracker. You are not required to use this, and we ask that you do not send it to the center. That this is an internal document because it does have personally identifiable information on there, and that we do not request that. So from our end, you will only be required to submit your progress report via the survey link that we share. We will be having, I'm going to go ahead and share our updated timeline, but before we go into that, there were just a few other questions that were asked. As a reminder, we're going to go ahead and reshare the Word document template for your organization. We really encourage every partner to complete their responses outside of the survey link. It's a long survey. You might need to collaborate with your partner or your staff on submitting that report. And so we do ask that you complete it outside of the survey link. We will also provide the recording of this webinar along with the slide deck, the optional tracker tool, and as well as the Word document template. So within the next week or so, you'll be receiving all of that from us. Very likely in May, we'll have our Alchemer overview. So we'll have a separate call that goes over, and actually all of our funded partners will be invited to that session. We'll go ahead and give an overview of what this looks like in the platform while we only addressed questions, or we only sort of raise the questions as screenshots of what they look like in the submission. We will look to be able to just walk through that and identify some of the pieces that Brianna mentioned when you might receive errors. As a friendly reminder, with any reporting that we have from the center, we do have optional office hours. This is an opportunity for your organization to come in. We'll cover an overview of the report that's going to be due, and then we also will ask any questions that our partners have. So we have typically 2 session or office hour sessions before every report. So we will have separate office hours for the progress report and separate office hours for the financial report. June 17th, as of right now, is the date that your first biannual progress report is due. And that again will cover activities from November 16th to May 15th of this year. Again, if you had limited activities or you're still ramping, you're just beginning your planning phase because we notified you on April 2nd of this award, that's okay. We still do need a report submitted by your organization. We need a run report from every organization who is an Elevate Youth California funded partner. And future reports will be due approximately every 6 months, with your next report being due January 31st to align with the calendar year. There was a question in the chat. If we had more specific questions to our programming and reporting, could we reach out? Who should we reach out to, essentially? And you can reach out to Elevate Youth California at shfcenter.org, the place, the email address that sends you all of your email communications. And we'll go ahead and route your questions to the applicable team. And if we need to jump on a call, we'll make sure that the staff who should be on that call are on there. So again, if you need an extension, request it before June 17th. If you have any questions, if there's any nuances to some of your reporting, or you have some questions, you're more than welcome to send us those questions over email. And if you want to schedule a time to chat, we can go ahead and do that. We do ask that you send over your questions. So please do send those over in your email so we can just make sure that respective team members are on that call if needed. And then there was another reminder that I was going to go ahead and give. And I'm totally, it is your first progress report. So many of our partners are still in their planning phases, while some had continued, their bolstering activities that were already in place. So what I'll just say is that the narrative section is really there to be able to give greater context to what the quantitative information is sort of reflecting. And so if you didn't have any activities, that's okay. Just please go ahead and again, fill out the information in the narrative section around why, and giving the caveat that this first reporting period will be very flexible. But again, we do expect, even if you had no activities through May 15th, 2024, we still do expect a report to be submitted. Every reporting period, we do anticipate that. And I will just also mention that if in future reports, if you have, you've had some transitions, your organization is experiencing some challenges, you've made some shifts, and one reporting period, the numbers are a little bit lower, you're kind of questioning, wow, what is our funder going to think about? We have the narrative section for a reason. We understand the challenges that community-based organizations and tribal organizations face. And so we really are here to be partners. So we want to be able to just provide any support that we can to help you all as you're going through any of the challenges that you're experiencing. So please, again, do not fret if your numbers go up and down over the course of the 3 years. It is common. You see increased participation from young people at various times in the year. As we kind of get close to graduation, end of the school year, you might see engagement look a little bit differently. So we understand those ebbs and flows, and we hope that you'll lean into the partnership in that regard as well. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and end our, we already covered this, so we'll go ahead and end our session. Just again, thank you all for joining and staying on. I know we're a few minutes over. As a reminder, we will be sharing this this recording as well as the additional resources and posting it to our website. Thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and week, and we'll be in touch soon.